I've been using the Elegoo Centauri Carbon 2, and honestly, it has printed some really nice stuff. There are a lot of features here that I think people are really going to like, especially at this price point. But it also hasn't been perfect. I have ran into a few issues that are definitely worth talking about, and you might want to know these before if you decide this printer makes sense for you.
Hey all, I'm Adam, and this is the Rad Dad Print Lab. Let's get into it. The Centauri Carbon 2 is the follow-up to the hugely popular Centauri Carbon. It is an enclosed Core XY printer with a familiar build volume of 256 cubed. If you're newer to 3D printing, Core XY basically means the printer is designed in a way that it allows it to move fast while still keeping the bed mostly stationary because it only goes up and down, whereas a bed slinger would move the bed back and forth. The enclosure also helps keep temperatures more stable, especially when printing materials that don't like drafts. This printer is aimed at people who are looking for speed, enclosed printing, and now multicolor printing. The price for the combo unit with the canvas system is $449, which is still on the cheaper end for this kind of feature set. I do want to mention that Elegoo did provide me this printer, but they aren't seeing this video before you do. At this point, I have over 200 hours on this printer, so instead of spending a bunch of time on the basic setup, I want to jump in right into how I feel about this printer, what I printed, and what features actually stood out, and the issues that I ran into. So far, I found the print quality to be quite good, especially with PLA and PETG. Honestly, when this printer is dialed in, it can put out some really nice looking prints. One print that really shocked me was this symbiote Spider-Man mask from Budwin. I printed it in Polymaker's HT PLA for that matte finish, and the eyes were done with Sunlu's white PLA. And for those who don't know, HT PLA is basically a version of PLA that can handle heat better if it's treated correctly. But in this case, I mainly use it because I really like that matte finish it gives. This is probably one of the better examples of what this printer can do when everything is working well. And this is where the printer honestly makes a really good first impression. The surface quality is nice, the details came out clean, and for the most part, I didn't feel like I had to fight this printer to get a good looking result with PLA. I also printed a bunch of other parts on this printer, including a printer poop container, a Gridfinity bin for my LTT shorty screwdriver, and a quick color change Gridfinity nozzle holder. I also printed a guitar pick guard for my good friend over at HandUp. If you like the shirts that I wear, go check them out. They have supported me for over 8 years at this point, and they're really cool people. I also wanted to test the hardened nozzle, so I ran some Elegoo PETG CF through it. And for those who don't know, PETG CF is PETG mixed with some carbon fiber pieces. It's more abrasive than normal PETG, so it's a good test for the hardened nozzle. Overall, the results were pretty solid. So for PLA and PETG, I really do like what I'm seeing from this machine. For multicolor, I kept things pretty simple because this style of system can waste a lot of filament, and I really didn't want to burn through a ton of it just for testing. If you're newer to multicolor printing, every time the printer changes colors, it has to flush out the old color before starting the next one. All that extra plastic becomes purge waste, or poop. I started small with these cute otter earrings for my wife, and then moved on to a simple multicolor benchy. From there, I tested a bit more with this Lumi star from Mario. It printed okay for the most part, but it didn't print out perfectly. So yes, the multicolor works, but I would still be selective about what I use it for. Multicolor printing is cool, but watching the purge pile grow up does make you question some life choices a little bit. And I did notice a little bit of color bleeding on some of these other ones that might have needed to have the purge factor adjusted in the slicer, but overall they still kind of look pretty cool. This printer uses Elegoo Slicer, which is a variant of Orca Slicer. Orca Slicer is a super popular slicer used by a ton of users, and basically, it's the software that turns your 3D model into the instructions that the printer can follow. Overall, Elegoo Slicer works decently well, because it's based on Orca Slicer. With the Centauri Carbon 2, you can now pair it with the phone app, which allows you to remotely view your prints. This is really handy when you get a notification about print issues that might be caught by the AI detection. The camera does a pretty decent job, although it's not the highest quality by any means. The interior lighting does a decent job illuminating the inside of the printer, and on the plus side, the frame rate is actually decent, which should not feel like a premium feature, but here we are. I'm looking at you, Bamboo Lab. The canvas system is new to the Centauri Carbon line. If you're newer to this kind of setup, the canvas system is basically Elegoo's way of feeding up to 4 different spools into the printer. That lets you print in multiple colors. keep different materials loaded, or automatically switch to another roll when one runs out. I will say this, it does look really familiar to the system that's on the FlashForge 85X, where you have spools mounted onto the side with the feeder system. However, the Elegoo system does have the ability to read RFID tags on the Elegoo spools, which is nice. Those RFID tags can help the printer identify what filament is loading, assuming you're using the compatible Elegoo spools. The spool mounts on the side do have some spring tension to help keep your spools from unwinding, but I still did run into a couple issues where the filament could get wrapped around the holder. So while the spring tension is nice, it wasn't completely trouble-free for me. So for me, a system like this shines when you can have it loaded up with different colors and materials, so you can quickly print what you want without having to manually swap rolls. And even better, if you have two of the same color of material loaded, it can automatically roll over to the other roll if you run out. That's where these systems make the most sense to me. That said, this kind of filament system still produces a lot of purge waste. Personally, I don't even like printing things if I know it's going to create a ton of waste. And just on a side note, I really do hate how tall these printers are getting. The canvas system on the top hat makes this printer massive, and it's messing up my whole shelving system at this point, but I know that's a me problem, not a you problem. Now this is where the review gets a little bit more complicated, because while I do think the Centauri Carbon 2 prints well, I did run into some issues. The first thing I noticed is that some of the default profiles felt close, but not quite there. Like they were one good slicer update away from being really solid. I'm constantly seeing issues where it looks like the printer is under extruding a bit, especially on certain prints. Under extrusion basically means the printer is not pushing out quite enough filament, so you can end up with gaps, weak spots, or surfaces that don't look as clean as they should. It wasn't enough to ruin every print, but it did happen enough that it definitely noticed it. This could have been fixed by a firmware update, as a lot of my test prints here are still on some older firmware. ASA is where this printer and I stopped agreeing as much. ASA is a higher temperature material that is more heat resistant than PLA, but it's also more difficult to print because it likes a warm, stable chamber. I ran into multiple instances where prints failed pretty badly because they lifted up off the build plate. Most of my ASA testing was done with Elegoo filament, but I did also get a successful benching in Prusament ASA and Prusament PC blend. Now, PC blend is another stronger, higher temperature material, but just like ASA, it really benefits from a stable environment when printing. However, both of those still had some warping near the bottom, so successful is a little relative here. To fix my ASA problem, I even tried using bed adhesives like Vision Miner, and I still had warping. So for me, I really do love the print quality from this printer when printing PLA or PETG, but I probably wouldn't look at this printer if your main goal is higher temp materials like ASA, at least not without adding a chamber heater or some other kind of modification. And for those who don't know, a chamber heater is basically a way to actively warm the inside of the printer instead of just relying on the enclosed space to trap heat. I'm not saying everyone needs to do that, but for materials like ASA, it would make a huge difference. Now, I think that the main issue might be the overall size of the enclosed space with the canvas system and that top hat. The stupid top hat. The printer has more area to keep warm, and for my testing, it just didn't seem nearly as confidence inspiring. The next big issue I had here was the cloud service. The cloud features are nice when they work, which is a sentence that probably applies to way too many things now. I'm constantly running into an issue where the slicer is not up to date with the printer, and sometimes the printer won't even show online in the list of devices, or even worse, it'll have old information that you cannot update. This would even prevent me from being able to send new prints to the machine. The only option I had to fix it was to print through USB. And I even ran into some issues with LAN mode. And LAN mode is basically lets the printer work over your local area network instead of relying on the cloud, which is a nice feature for a lot of people out there that don't like their stuff connected to the cloud.
This is really annoying. It's not printing, it's not doing anything. But yet here, it won't let me send a print. It won't let me stop it because the printer's not printing. But yet, it's stuck in a printing state. And you can't even send stuff to print, which is really frustrating.
In theory, it's great, but in my case, it still wasn't completely perfect. I couldn't even get the filament to update in the device settings. I also ran into a really weird instance where I thought my camera might be failing. The live preview would flicker and artifact like the camera was going bad, and this was all happening in land mode. Oddly enough, once I re-enabled cloud mode, it hasn't done it since. The printer also now has AI detection, but it doesn't seem to work super well. The AI detection did catch a lot of problems, but unfortunately, some of those problems were imaginary. I had to throw false positives constantly when I was trying to print the Spider-Man helmet. I ended up turning off spaghetti detection just to make it stop.
Spaghetti failure detected. Where? I don't actually see anything. So, I mean, this is the purge line. That's nothing. But I think it's looking fine.
Spaghetti detection is supposed to notice when a print fails and starts turning into a pile of loose filament instead of an actual print. When it works, that can save you a lot of wasted material, but in my case, it was just way too sensitive. One nice thing that you do have the option of is that you can get a notification without actually stopping the printer. That's great if you get a false positive and want to check it out yourself, but if you're doing an overnight print, you might want it to pause the print instead. And you can go in and adjust the sensitivity of the spaghetti detection, but like I said, I just ended up turning mine off. If multicolor and huge top hats aren't your thing, you now have the option for an updated Centauri Carbon 2 without the canvas system. Depending on what printer you might want, this might actually be the version that I would look at. You still get the updated printer, but without the extra height, extra filament pass, and the extra complexity of the canvas system. If you're more interested in regular single color printing, especially with materials where chamber temperature matters, I think the non-canvas version might be a better fit for a lot of people. I think that this is a great revision of the Centauri Carbon, but unfortunately, I do think it falls short in some areas. The print quality is great, and the feature set is really impressive, especially at this price point. For anyone looking to get one of these printers, I'll have an affiliate link down below. It helps support the channel at no additional cost to you, and I really do appreciate it. And if you found this video helpful, consider getting subscribed. I've got a lot more 3D printer reviews, upgrades, and real-world testing coming soon. You can also support the channel over on Patreon if you want to help keep me making more of these videos. Now, if you want to see what I thought of the original Centauri Carbon, you can watch this video right here. And if you want to see how it stacks up against the Bambu Lab A1, you can watch this video right here. This is Adam from the Rad Dad Print Lab, and I'll see you next time.